Welcome to my storytelling channel. Today, we will embark on a story called Whispers Beneath the Ice, a journey tinged with death, mystery, and gates not for the faint of heart. Before we begin, what time are you listening to the story? Are you sitting in a warm room or next to a flickering fireplace? Leave a comment so you know. You're not alone tonight. And now, turn down the lights. Put on your headphones. Listen to the sound of rain and the whispers from the darkness. The story begins. The room smelled of old parchment and sea salt. Dr. Eleanor West, renowned British archaeologist and historian, stood in the archive vault of the University of Iceland in Reykjavik. Her gloved hands delicately turned over a brittle, yellowed scroll, its edges crumbling like ash. Her breath caught when she saw it. A rough sketch of an island shaped like a cracked tooth, floating alone in the northern Atlantic. Beside it were faded runes and a crude drawing of a gateway carved into ice. She whispered, Skrailingar. It wasn't the first time she'd heard the name, nor was it the first time it had been tied to tragedy. During World War II, a Nazi expedition vanished near this island. The only thing ever recovered was a journal frozen in a block of ice, shipped to Reykjavik decades later, its contents written in maddening, looping script and smeared with something that tested positive for human blood. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she slid the scroll into a protective case. She had been following these breadcrumbs for years, whispers in old Viking sagas, cryptic notes from failed expeditions, even folk tales from Greenlandic fishermen about the place where the ice breathes. She didn't believe in curses. But she did believe in secrets, especially the kind buried under centuries of snow and silence. Back at her hotel, Eleanor made a call. Her voice was calm but urgent. I found it. The island is real. We're going. Within days, a team was assembled. She had handpicked each member not just for their skills, but for their willingness to stare into the unknown. Victor Halverson, Norwegian linguist and rune specialist. Brilliant, eccentric, and a bit too obsessed with Norse mythology. Dr. Alan Strauss, American trauma surgeon with experience in war zones. Maya Chowdhury, Indian-British cryptographer and drone technician. Gabriel Gabe Rios, ex-military survivalist and weapons expert from Brazil. Renata Volkov, Russian filmmaker, hired to document the expedition for a future documentary. Sven Lindgren, Icelandic pilot, familiar with Arctic flight patterns. 7 people. 1 destination. No idea what waited for them beneath the ice. Their aircraft was a heavily modified Soviet-era Mi-8 helicopter, retrofitted for deep Arctic flights. As it thundered over jagged icebergs and snow-covered ocean, Eleanor studied the map again. The runes were partially translated by Victor. Guard the breathless. Never awaken the fire beneath the frost. Eleanor glanced at the team. They were talking, laughing even, confident in their gear and experience. She envied them. None of them had seen what she had. Ancient drawings of screaming souls etched into Viking burial stones, stories of snow that moaned at night, or the single surviving radio transmission from the 1942 expedition. The gate opens. The gate opens. They landed at the island's southern ridge, where the glacier descended in jagged blue cliffs. The temperature was minus 25 degrees Celsius, and the wind howled like wolves through the peaks. They set up base near an old structure, half buried in snow and ice. According to historical aerial photos, it wasn't there 10 years ago. The stones were black and smooth, out of place amid the glacier. No wildlife, no sounds, only the wind. And something else beneath it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Eleanor noticed something disturbing. The compass needles spun in slow, lazy circles. Renata, filming nearby, muttered, "This place is wrong." Eleanor nodded. Deep inside, she felt it too, like they had stepped not into a place, but into the memory of something ancient and very much alive. The sun never truly rose. Though it was mid-morning, the sky remained a pale, haunting gray. Eleanor stepped outside their makeshift tent and scanned the frozen horizon. The air was still but heavy, as if the island itself was holding its breath. Gabe Rios was already up examining the surrounding terrain. He nodded toward the north. Found something. Old tracks. Snow-covered but not erased completely. Heavy gear, wide spacing. Could be from a past expedition. Eleanor's heart quickened. "Show me." They followed the tracks through shallow snowdrifts and icy ridges until they reached what appeared to be the remnants of a long-abandoned encampment. Half-buried metal crates, shattered wooden beams, and a rusted generator lay scattered beneath the snow like bones. A torn banner flapped from a leaning pole, its faded emblem unmistakably German. Dr. Strauss muttered, "1942. Victor knelt beside a buried metal box and pried it open. Inside were frost-bitten papers, sealed canisters, and a camera. "Still intact," he whispered. "Unbelievable." Maya took the camera, her fingers delicate but swift. "If I can extract the film, we might see what happened here." Eleanor felt a chill run deeper than the cold. They never made it off this island. No records, no rescue. She turned to the others. "From now on, no one moves alone, always in pairs. This place, it's watching." Later that day, Victor called her over. He stood before a stone wall, half cleared of ice. Carved into it were runes, long, flowing, and meticulously etched. He traced a line of them with his gloved finger. "This isn't just Old Norse. It's a dialect I've only seen mentioned in mythological contexts. It speaks of a door, guarded by breathless watchers, and fire beneath the frost." Eleanor exhaled slowly. "Same phrase from the map." Victor nodded. "This is more than Viking myth. This is something else." They called it the Frost Gate. As night fell, temperatures plummeted to -40°C. The camp was quiet, insulated against the howling wind outside. Maya worked on extracting the camera footage. Dr. Strauss logged medical reports. Gabe cleaned the weapons cache, while Renata filmed everything from inside the tent. At 3:17 a.m., a scream shattered the silence. Eleanor burst from her cot, flashlight in hand, racing toward the source. It was Renata, who had been standing watch with Strauss. They found him collapsed in the snow, eyes wide open, staring at nothing. But he was still breathing, barely. Dr. Strauss was alive, but frozen stiff, as if flash-frozen from the inside. His lips were blue, fingers like ice. No visible wounds, no trauma. Victor stammered. "He was fine 10 minutes ago." Maya scanned his vitals. "Body temperature is 19°C. That's impossible. He should be dead." Renata whispered. "I heard something before he fell. A voice, like chanting, in a language I didn't know." Eleanor felt dread coil in her gut. Something ancient had stirred. And now it had chosen its first victim. Dr. Strauss was unconscious for nearly 6 hours, wrapped in heated blankets and surrounded by emergency equipment. His breath barely showed in the freezing air. Maya monitored him while Eleanor paced the tent like a caged animal. "I can't explain it," Maya finally said. "No frostbite, no internal trauma. It's like his body shut down without a cause. His heart rate dropped to 30 beats per minute, but it's stable now." Victor sat in the corner, flipping through an ancient journal recovered from the German camp. His brow was furrowed in concentration. "This has happened before," he muttered. One of the Nazi scientists, Koenig, wrote about a teammate who heard whispers in his sleep. The next morning they found him frozen stiff, eyes open, mouth full of ice. Eleanor's voice was tight. "What did they do?" Victor looked up. "They left him behind." No one spoke for a long time. By late morning, the wind had died down, and visibility improved. Eleanor insisted on resuming the expedition. They couldn't afford to stop. Whatever had attacked Strauss had chosen not to kill. Yet, that meant time. Sven flew the drone over the northern cliffs, searching for an opening in the ice wall. Maya and Renata monitored the feed. At first, the screen showed only endless sheets of white and jagged blue stone. But then, A shape. It was a perfect circle carved into the glacier, barely visible under layers of snow. The ice around it had a different hue, as if it had been scorched. A soft mist drifted from the opening, even in -40 degrees Celsius. Maya zoomed in. "It's breathing," she whispered. Renata's eyes widened. "No, the mist, it's moving in and out, like lungs." Eleanor stared at the screen, heart thudding. "Prepare gear, we're going." They reached the formation within the hour. The entrance loomed before them, a round tunnel 10 feet across, stretching into darkness. Gabe tested the perimeter for structural stability. The walls were smooth, too smooth to be natural. Burn marks lined the edges. "This wasn't carved by tools," Gabe said. "Something melted through the ice." Victor shined his lantern into the passage. "Or someone." They entered cautiously, headlamps flickering against the ice. The tunnel curved downward, narrowing slightly, like descending into a throat. Renata recorded everything, her camera's red light blinking steadily. The deeper they went, the warmer it became. After 30 minutes, they reached a chamber, a vast hollow dome, lit by strange blue crystals embedded in the walls. The air shimmered with faint heat, and their breath fogged only slightly. Victor knelt to examine the symbols carved into the floor. "This is no longer Norse. This is something older, something wrong." Suddenly, Eleanor stopped. Her ears were ringing. "Do you hear that?" she asked. Everyone froze. There it was, a whispering, soft, incomprehensible, like dozens of voices speaking over each other in a language not meant for humans. Gabe raised his rifle. "We're not alone." Then the ice beneath them cracked. A scream rang out. "Renata!" The floor opened, and she fell. Renata's scream echoed through the chamber as she plunged into darkness. Eleanor lunged forward, but the ice where Renata had stood moments ago had sealed shut again, smooth and glassy as if it had never opened. Only a thin crack remained, barely wide enough to press a finger into. Victor dropped to his knees, slamming the butt of his flashlight against the ice. "We have to break through." "No," Eleanor said, gripping his arm. "The ice reformed too fast. If we melt it, it could collapse whatever's beneath. We need to think." Maya's voice trembled. "She fell so far. I didn't even hear her hit the ground." The chamber went silent. Gabe scanned the floor. "Look, the runes have shifted. The markings carved into the ice now glowed faintly red. Some had changed shape, morphing like liquid into new symbols. They pulsed, in rhythm with something deeper, like a heartbeat far below." Sven whispered. "The island is alive." For hours, they searched for another entrance or a way down. Nothing. Just as hope began to thin, Gabe discovered a crack along the eastern wall, nearly invisible, but exhaling a faint, warm vapor. He tapped it with his pickaxe, and the stone crumbled like ash. Behind it, a narrow spiral staircase carved straight into the ice, descending into darkness. "No signs of tool marks," Gabe muttered. "This wasn't carved. It was formed." Eleanor turned to the group. "We go in pairs. I'll take point. Victor with me. Maya and Gabe follow. Sven stays topside with Strauss. If we don't return in 6 hours, go back to the ship and call for extraction." Sven nodded grimly. "Understood." The descent was suffocating. Step after step, the temperature grew warmer, but so did the pressure. The ice walls groaned as if burdened by secrets long kept. The whispers returned, louder now, still unintelligible, but seductive. Victor gripped the railing tightly. "They're in my head," he said. "Whispers. They're offering things. Knowledge. Power." "Shut them out," Eleanor ordered. "They're not real." "They are," Victor said, trembling. "And they remember us." After nearly an hour, the stairs opened into a massive subterranean chamber, a city beneath the glacier. Pillars of obsidian-like ice rose toward a distant ceiling. Strange architecture, spiraling arches, jagged towers, doorways too tall for any human, emerged from the darkness, bathed in eerie bioluminescent light. Pools of black liquid bubbled quietly at intervals. Maya gasped. This place wasn't made, it was grown. Then a noise, wet, clicking, echoed from one of the arches. They turned their lights toward it. A figure moved, slow, gaunt, draped in tattered robes of what looked like frozen flesh. Its face was a pale mask, eyeless, yet it seemed to stare directly at them. Victor whispered, "Watcher." It raised a hand and pointed at them, and then it screamed. The scream was not just a sound. It was a force. It shook the chamber, vibrating through the ice and rattling their bones. The bioluminescent lights dimmed, flickered, and then pulsed in sync with the creature's cry. Victor stumbled back, hands over his ears. "It's inside my head. It's screaming in my head." Eleanor raised her flare gun and fired. The red light exploded in the darkness, illuminating the Watcher fully for the first time. Its robes were stitched from countless layers of human skin, ancient, leathery, and frozen. Beneath the mask, nothing but writhing black tendrils slithered from the neck hole. It didn't move. Instead, it dropped to its knees and pointed toward a massive black archway at the far end of the chamber, sealed with a translucent membrane that shimmered like oil. Then it lowered its hand, touched the ground, and collapsed into dust. Silence returned, broken only by the faint hum of the strange architecture. Maya knelt next to the pile of ash. It wasn't attacking. It was warning us. Victor nodded, his face pale. "It saw something behind that door. It tried to stop us." Gabe approached the membrane cautiously. "This looks biological, like a cocoon." He pressed his palm against it. The surface quivered like jelly. Then, faintly, he heard it. A heartbeat. Steady, loud, alive. "It's sleeping," Gabe whispered. Eleanor stepped beside him, holding a small camera. "We document, then we leave. We're not here to wake anything." But it was too late. A sound echoed from behind them. Footsteps. Eleanor turned and screamed. Renata stood at the edge of the stairway, soaked in black fluid, her eyes glazed over and motionless. Her body moved stiffly, like a puppet suspended by invisible strings. "Renata!" Maya ran toward her. Renata turned her head and spoke in a voice not her own. "The dreamer stirs." The walls pulsed. The cocoon throbbed. A low moan echoed through the ground, like a beast shifting in slumber. Victor pulled Maya back. "That's not her anymore." Renata lifted a hand, and her fingertips cracked open, revealing long black claws. Then she lunged. Renata slammed into Victor, claws tearing through his jacket, nearly missing his throat. He fell backward, crashing against a pillar of black ice. "Don't kill her," Maya screamed. "There might still be a way to save." Eleanor didn't hesitate. She raised her pistol and fired. The bullet struck Renata in the shoulder, but instead of blood, a thick black ichor oozed out, hissing as it hit the ground. Renata barely flinched. She turned her head toward Eleanor, her eyes now a solid, glowing white. Then she roared, a low, guttural sound that shook the ice beneath their feet, and charged. Gabe hurled his flare into her path, blinding her momentarily. Victor, blood dripping from a gash in his arm, scrambled to his feet and pulled Maya back toward the stairs. "She's gone, Maya. Whatever that thing is, it's using her." Renata lunged again, but this time Eleanor ducked under and drove a climbing spike straight into her side. Renata shrieked, flailing, black tendrils bursting from her wound and writhing like worms. Then she froze. Her entire body began to tremble, then convulse. The white glow in her eyes flickered. Her mouth opened, like she wanted to speak, but only black liquid poured out. She collapsed onto the floor. Still, no one moved. Then, slowly, Victor approached and knelt beside her. "She's gone," Gabe exhaled. "We need to leave, now." Eleanor shook her head. "We can't go back the way we came. The stairs are unstable and, whatever that cocoon is, we can't leave it unchecked." "But it's not our job to stop it," Maya snapped. "We're not soldiers." "No," Eleanor replied. "We're witnesses. If we leave without learning what this is, no one will believe us." A soft hum filled the chamber. The cocoon at the far end of the city began to pulse faster, almost excited. Then they heard something new, a voice. Not human, not loud, but all around them, inside them. One awakens, the rest remember. We hunger. The silence after the voice faded was almost worse than the voice itself. Eleanor backed away from the cocoon, pistol trembling in her hand. We need to get out. There must be another way. Gabe nodded and pointed toward a narrow passage, half collapsed behind the chamber. I saw something back there, like an old tunnel. Victor slung his pack over one shoulder, blood still dripping down his sleeve. Then that's our only shot. Maya lingered near Renata's body for a moment longer, tears welling in her eyes. She was my friend. She followed me here. Eleanor touched her arm gently. Then don't let her death be meaningless. The tunnel was narrow and winding, carved deep into the black ice, walls etched with symbols they couldn't read. The deeper they went, the colder it got. Not the normal kind of cold, but something ancient, pressing, watching. Frost formed on their eyelashes. The air grew thick, harder to breathe. And then they saw them. Bodies, hundreds of them, frozen into the walls. Men and women, some in modern gear, others in ancient tribal clothing, even Roman-style armor. All with faces twisted in terror, mouths open in eternal screams. They came here before us, Gabe whispered. And none of them made it out. One of the corpses moved. Maya gasped. Its eyes, milky and frozen, blinked once. Then its jaw clicked open and released a whisper. He waits. Victor stumbled back. What the hell is this place? Eleanor took a photo quickly, breath shaky. A graveyard, but they're not dead. Not entirely. They hurried on. Boots crunching on frost-covered stone, the whispers of the dead now following them, growing louder, chanting in ancient languages none of them could understand. Symbols on the walls began to glow faintly as they passed. Pale blue, like veins of frozen light. Then the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber, a temple. Pillars of black ice spiraled toward the ceiling. A stone altar stood at the center, carved with grotesque figures, part human, part insect, part unknown. Above the altar, suspended in the air, floated a heart, black, frozen, and still beating slowly. Is that? Maya whispered. Alive? No, Gabe said, swallowing. It's not alive. It's dreaming. Victor's voice was hoarse. Why are we seeing this? Why are we being shown all this? Eleanor's face was pale. Because we woke something, and it wants us to see. Then the whispers grew loud again. Closer, and from the tunnel behind them, they heard footsteps. Many. The footsteps multiplied. They echoed from the tunnel, slow, wet, shambling steps. And with them came a smell. Rotting ice and something older, fouler. Feral. Gabe raised his flare. They're coming. We need to move. Victor stepped closer to the floating heart. No, look, something's happening. Cracks began to form along the walls. Thin streams of frozen mist hissed out from hidden vents. The symbols carved into the altar began to glow red now, pulsing like veins. And the heart, it beat faster. Eleanor stared at it. It's reacting to them. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the tunnel. At first, they thought it was another frozen corpse, but then it moved. Its skin was stretched tight across its face, gray and translucent. Its eyes were lidless and white, lips torn back in a perpetual grin. It wore what once had been a Soviet jacket, now stiff with ice and blackened mold. Behind it came others, dozens, hundreds, ancient explorers, soldiers, tribesmen, men and women from across time, all twisted into the same grotesque shape. Not undead, not alive. Puppets. Their mouths moved in perfect unison, whispering words in a dead tongue. The dreamer wakes. The gate must open. The blood must flow. Victor backed away slowly. We're not getting out through that tunnel. Eleanor grabbed Maya's hand. Run, now! They dashed across the chamber, aiming for another archway on the far side. Gabe tossed a flare at the horde, momentarily blinding them, and the group slipped into another passage. Behind them, the chant grew louder. The gate must open. The blood must flow. The corridor sloped downward, deeper still into the ice. Then, without warning, the ground gave way. The four of them plunged into darkness. When they landed, the air was different, warm, almost humid. They had fallen into a vast subterranean cavern, filled with black water and towering fungus-like structures that glowed faintly blue. Maya groaned. "Is this underground jungle?" Gabe helped her up. "Or something like it. I think we passed through a threshold." "Threshold to what?" Victor asked. Eleanor touched the floor. It was warm, pulsing like muscle beneath stone. "To where it dreams," she whispered. Then, from the far end of the cavern, something massive moved. Not walking, slithering. The sound was like flesh dragging across stone. Wet, massive, alive. The team froze, listening as the slithering noise drew closer. Faint ripples spread across the surface of the black water. The fungal towers pulsed as if responding to the movement. Then it emerged. A mouth, at least 5 meters wide, rose from the water like an opening abyss. Not attached to a head, not part of a body. Just a floating, gaping, hungry mouth, lined with rows of inward-facing teeth like obsidian needles. It breathed. The entire cavern seemed to inhale with it. Maya screamed. Victor raised his flare, its light barely illuminating the nightmare in front of them. "What is that?" Gabe yanked him back just as the mouth surged forward, slamming into the rocks with a wet crash. The ground trembled. The group scattered, diving behind the mushroom-like pillars for cover. Eleanor crouched low, whispering, "It's not hunting with sight. It's listening." The cavern fell silent again except for the creature's slow, sucking breaths. Then Maya moved. A loose rock skittered under her boot. The mouth snapped toward the sound like a serpent, crashing into a pillar. The fungus exploded in a cloud of blue spores. Maya barely dodged, rolling to the side. Gabe grabbed her arm and pulled her behind another structure. "Stay low." The creature paused, mouth hovering midair, then let out a deep, vibrating moan. And from the walls of the cavern, something answered. From the fungus grew eyes, hundreds of them, pale, lidless, watching. Victor staggered back. "It's not alone. This entire place is alive," Eleanor gasped. "We're inside it. Inside him." More tendrils slithered down from the ceiling, thin, bone-white, covered in tiny grasping mouths. One of them latched onto Victor's arm. He screamed, trying to tear it off. The mouths began to bite. Gabe pulled his knife, sliced through the tendril. Black ichor sprayed across his face. "We have to move," he shouted. Eleanor pointed to a crumbling stone bridge near the far wall. "There! That might be a way out." They ran. Maya first, then Gabe. Eleanor dragging Victor behind. The massive mouth shrieked, an ear-splitting sound. Primal and furious. Tendrils shot after them, slapping the stone, grabbing, tearing. Victor stumbled. One of the tendrils caught his leg and yanked him backward. He screamed, grabbing at Eleanor's sleeve. "Don't let go!" But the force was too strong. He was torn from her grip. The mouth lunged forward, swallowing him whole. There was no time to mourn. They reached the bridge, crumbling, slick, ancient, and ran across it as the creature's moans echoed behind them. Maya whispered, tears in her eyes. One by one, the bridge cracked behind them. Chunks of ancient stone fell into the black water below, swallowed without a sound. Maya, Gabe, and Eleanor stood panting, soaked in sweat and ichor, staring back across the void where Victor had vanished. Eleanor closed her eyes. "He's gone." No one answered. They couldn't. There was no time. Before them, the cave narrowed into a tunnel, ribbed, fleshy, pulsing faintly. It wasn't stone anymore. Not exactly. It felt like they were inside a body. Or worse, inside a dream made of flesh. Maya took a shaky step forward. "We keep moving. If we stop, we die." The tunnel twisted like intestines and the air grew hotter. The symbols carved into the walls now pulsed with a red-orange glow, different from the ones above. These were older, deeper, almost alive. Whispers began to echo around them, not like before, not the collective chant of the dead. These were individual, broken voices, cries, pleas, laughter, screams, all overlapping in maddening harmony. Gabe gritted his teeth. "It's in our heads." Eleanor touched one of the glowing symbols. Her hand recoiled. "They're memories." "What?" "Memories. From something ancient. It's not just dreaming, it remembers." Suddenly, the tunnel opened up into a massive atrium, and what they saw made them freeze. A map carved into a wall. A relief covered in runes, arteries, and strange constellations. And at the center, a gate, not a door. A hole in space, spiraling inward like an eye. Maya stepped closer. "It's real. This thing, whatever it is, it's trying to open that." Gabe frowned. "You think that's the gate those things were chanting about?" Eleanor nodded. "The gate must open. The blood must flow." "But for what?" Gabe whispered. Then came the answer. Not in words, but in a sudden wave of emotion. Terror, hunger, loneliness, endless cosmic yearning, all from beyond the gate. The three staggered back. Eleanor pressed her hand to her chest. "Something is trapped, and it's dreaming. It's trying to reach through." Maya stared at the map. "It's not just here. Look, that symbol is in Antarctica, but that one's in Norway, and that one's in India. It's connected," Gabe muttered, "like a neural network. It's alive," Eleanor added. "The Earth is infected." Then the ground shook. A deep, thunderous growl echoed through the tunnels. From behind them, faint, shuffling footsteps approached. Dozens of them. "They followed us," Maya whispered. "No," Eleanor said grimly. "They never stopped. They were always coming." The footsteps multiplied, slapping, shuffling, scraping skin on stone. Then they appeared. Figures emerged from the tunnel, bent, twitching, covered in ice and fungal rot. Gabe's breath caught in his throat. It was Lena. Her skin had split down the middle like bark, and something moved beneath it. Her eyes were glassy and milky white, no longer human. Behind her came others. Simon, Jacob, Raoul, all of them. "They're dead," Maya whispered. Eleanor shook her head. "No, worse. The figures advanced, slow and purposeful, like puppets moved by invisible strings. Their mouths hung open, whispering that same phrase again and again. The gate must open. The blood must flow. Gabe raised his flare. The light cast dancing shadows across their ruined faces. He hesitated. We can't just kill them. They're not them anymore," Eleanor said firmly. "Not really." Maya clenched her jaw, her hand on the handle of her ice axe. "Then we put them to rest." Lena suddenly sprinted. Not shambling, not stumbling, fast, predatory. Gabe cried out as she leapt, knocking him to the ground. Her hands gripped his throat, and something inside her mouth, a long black tendril, began to slither toward his face. Eleanor fired her flare gun. Lena's head burst in a splash of ash and black fluid. She crumpled on top of Gabe, twitching. Chaos erupted. The others charged. Jacob howled, not in pain, but in something older, a call to something listening beyond the veil of the world. Gabe shoved the corpse off and grabbed his pickaxe. Maya swung her ice axe, splitting Simon's skull. Eleanor lit another flare and hurled it at Raoul, who caught fire but didn't scream. He just kept walking until he collapsed, burning silently. The battle was short, but savage. And when it was over, the tunnel floor was littered with steaming remains. Gabe leaned against the wall, shaking. "We're killing our friends." "No," Maya said softly, wiping blood from her face. "We're freeing them." A silence fell, thick, heavy, reverent. Eleanor stepped toward the map again. "We have to destroy it. This gate, whatever it is. We can't let it open." "But how?" Gabe asked. Maya stared at the runes. "These markings, they're a system, like an operating code." Eleanor looked at her. "You think we can shut it down?" "Maybe, if we find the core." the heart. A deep rumble answered them. From beyond the map wall, stone shifted. A section of the wall split open, revealing a narrow path winding downward, glowing red from below, like the throat of a sleeping giant. Gabe exhaled. Well, I guess it heard us. And it wants us to come deeper. The narrow path was warm. Too warm. The walls pulsed with a slow heartbeat, red light bleeding from the veins in the stone. Gabe wiped sweat from his brow, but it did nothing. The heat came from within, seeping into bones, into thought. Are we going down or in? Maya muttered. Eleanor ran her hand along the wall. We're not in rock anymore. This is something else. Like what? Flesh, memory, dream. The tunnel twisted again, spiraling like a corkscrew. A low hum vibrated in the stone just under the range of hearing, felt more in the teeth than the ears. Then came the whispers again, but this time they weren't foreign. They were personal. Maya heard her mother's voice, faint, sobbing, pleading. A memory she had buried. You left me, it said. No, Maya whispered, eyes wide. You're not real. Gabe stumbled, clutching his ears. He heard the screams of the avalanche that had taken his brother on a climb years ago. Please help me, the voice cried. I tried, Gabe shouted. Eleanor dropped to one knee, clutching her head. Her father's voice boomed through her mind. Too slow, always too slow. I was a child, she cried. The tunnel seemed to laugh. Not with joy, but with knowing. This place had no mercy, only mirrors. They emerged into a chamber of red crystal, sharp, jagged, beautiful. But it pulsed like a heart. In its center floated an orb of liquid obsidian, suspended in tendrils of dark light. And inside the orb, something moved, a shape, long, slender, coiled like a fetus in the womb. It was not dead. It was dreaming, and its dream was bleeding into reality. Maya gasped. It's the heart. Gabe took a step back. This is the thing that's calling to them, raising the dead, corrupting the earth. Eleanor's eyes were locked on the orb. It's not just power. It's intelligence. A mind. Maya looked at her. Can we kill it? I don't know, Eleanor whispered. But if we don't try, we're next. Suddenly, the crystal chamber cracked. From the shadows emerged sentinels, humanoid shapes made of bone and ash, draped in robes of decayed skin. Their eyes glowed with a light not born of the sun. They didn't walk, they floated. 6 of them. Gabe raised his pickaxe, hands shaking. Eleanor drew her flare gun, realizing it only had 1 shot left. Maya gripped her ice axe tight. They're not going to let us touch that thing, she said. Then we fight, Gabe said. For them, Eleanor added, looking back at the path behind them. For everyone, Maya finished. And then the sentinels attacked. They moved without sound. The 6 sentinels glided forward like specters, their bodies pulsing faintly with the same red glow that lined the tunnel walls. One raised its hand, long, skeletal fingers extended, and from its palm erupted a blast of black wind. The wind screamed like a chorus of the damned. Gabe was flung backward, slamming into the wall. He barely had time to roll aside before another blast scorched the stone where his head had been. Maya darted left, swinging her ice axe in a clean arc. But it passed through the creature like smoke. No resistance, no flesh. They're not solid, she shouted. They're not even alive, Eleanor yelled, firing her last flare. The flare struck one directly, and it screamed. The sentinel burst into ash, its form unraveling like burned cloth. They fear fire, she cried. Use the flares. We don't have any more, Gabe shouted, dragging himself upright. Maya's eyes darted to the floor, where bits of broken crystal shimmered red. We make fire, she growled, grabbing her survival pack. Eleanor kicked open her emergency torch tube. Inside were magnesium sticks, meant for melting snow, cooking, survival in the worst Arctic storms. She struck 2 together, and a white-blue flame flared to life. Another sentinel lunged toward her, and she shoved the flame into its chest. It howled, its robe igniting instantly and melted into ash as it tried to claw away. Maya lit her own flame, eyes wild. We burned them back to whatever pit they came from. The battle raged. 3 sentinels fell quickly to improvise torches, but the remaining ones adapted, shifting faster, attacking from angles beyond human reflex. Gabe felt cold claws rake his back. He spun, screaming, and plunged the lit magnesium rod straight into the sentinel's face. It burst into flame, shrieking with a voice that didn't belong in this world. Only one remained. It hovered above the obsidian heart, shielding it. Eleanor stared at the last guardian. It didn't attack. It simply watched, unmoving, and then spoke, but not with words. Images, emotions. A flood of visions poured into her mind. A massive doorway beneath the ice. Countless beings chained inside. A deal struck in ancient blood. Knowledge for freedom. And this heart, this creature, dreaming its way to awakening through human minds. Maya shouted, "What's it doing?" It's talking," Eleanor gasped. "It's showing me the truth." Gabe growled, torch in hand. "We don't need truth. We need this thing dead." He lunged. Gabe hurled the flame at the last sentinel. It caught fire. But this time, it did not fall. It screamed in agony, yes, but instead of dying, it dove into the orb. The heart pulsed, and then it opened. The obsidian split like a blooming flower. The air grew thick, electric. The ground shook. From inside the heart, the coiled shape began to unfold. It wasn't large, not yet, but it radiated a presence too big for the room. Maya whispered, "What did you do?" Gabe backed away. I think I woke it up." Eleanor stared in horror. "Then we need to end this, now." And before the creature could rise, she raised her magnesium torch and leapt into the light. Eleanor's body struck the orb. She expected resistance. Solid heat, pain, impact. But instead, she was swallowed. No sound, no ground, no sky, just light. White, blinding, endless light. It wasn't fire, it was memory, thought, ancient will made manifest. She floated, and before her, the creature unfolded. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't even angry. It was curious. Its form was impossible to define. A swirl of limbs and eyes and whispers, always changing, always observing. And its voice was not sound, but sensation, rippling across her skin and mind. "You have touched the light before the time was right." Eleanor didn't speak. She thought, "We had no choice. You're killing people. I am waking, and waking always kills the dream. This world is not your dream, yet I was born here. Long before your kind learned to speak fire, images poured into her. Civilizations buried in ice, great wars beneath the surface of the earth, and a pact human minds offered as dream vessels in exchange for knowledge that built empires. But now the dreamer stirred, and if it fully woke, the world would not survive. Outside the orb, Maya and Gabe watched the heart pulse, its glow growing faster, hotter. Cracks formed on the floor. The air shimmered with static. "We can't wait," Gabe shouted. "If Eleanor's dead, we're next." Maya's grip on the magnesium flare tightened. "She's not dead. She jumped into a goddamn orb. What do you think?" The crystal floor split. From the heart, tentacles of black smoke lashed out, carving through stone and ice. The cavern shook violently. Above, icicles cracked and rained down in deadly shards. Maya and Gabe dove for cover behind a chunk of broken pillar. From the open orb, a beam of light shot upward, punching through the ice above and into the Arctic sky. Gabe whispered, "It's calling something." "No," Maya said, staring in horror. "It's answering something. It's back inside the light." Eleanor stood before the entity. "You don't belong here. Everything belongs where it began. You began in sleep. Then let me sleep again." She hesitated. "Why now?" "Because the ice is melting. The locks are breaking. Your world opens doors it cannot close. The orb's memories showed her drilling stations, oil rigs, buried catacombs unearthed by greed. She saw them waking more than just this heart. If you wake, you destroy everything. Then give me reason not to. She reached into her jacket, pulled the only thing left, her father's locket. She held it out. Memory, grief, hope. The creature paused. For a moment, it felt human, and then it whispered. Sleep is a mercy. The light collapsed. Eleanor fell. The orb exploded in silence. A flash of white folding into nothing. The obsidian heart cracked, then shattered, and the glowing tendrils vanished into dust. Gabe and Maya ran forward. They found Eleanor, bruised, burned, but alive, at the center of the ruined heart. It stopped, Maya said. Did you kill it? Gabe asked. Eleanor sat up slowly. No, I made it choose. And? She looked up at the hole in the ceiling where starlight now poured in. It chose to sleep again. The silence was unnatural, not peace. Something else. Like a breath held too long. Eleanor leaned on Maya's shoulder, blinking at the ruined heart. Every part of her ached. Inside her mind, the memory of that entity still echoed like a fading song. It's over, Gabe muttered, but no one believed it. They climbed back toward the ice corridor, stepping over the shattered black stone. The pulse was gone, the light dimmed. And yet, the walls still whispered. Not words, just pressure, a subtle vibration beneath their skin. Then came the second pulse. It struck like thunder in their bones. A low boom, followed by a wave of heat so sudden it fogged their breath in reverse. Hot mist pouring from their mouths. Gabe froze. That wasn't it. That wasn't the same heart. Maya turned. You think there's another one? Eleanor nodded slowly. No, not another. A chain. As they stumbled into the tunnel, ice above them cracked again. This time with intent. Not random collapse, but rhythmic. Pulsing. Something below the cavern was still moving. Further ahead, the ice had turned red. Not blood. Light, flickering from beneath like a storm buried under the glacier. We need to go back, Gabe said. We've got data. Eleanor's alive. Let's just report this to the world. We can't, she said. Not yet. Why the hell not? Because this thing, it's not finished. They moved deeper, toward the new light. Here, the walls were older. Not ice, but polished black obsidian with etchings no tool could make. Eleanor ran her fingers over the grooves. Symbols lit up faintly where she touched. It responded to her. And in a moment of clarity, she saw the map. Not a map of the tunnels, a map of the sleeping mines. The network of ancient vessels scattered across the poles, each heart guarding a deeper layer of knowledge, or danger, or both. The creature was not alone. It was one of 9. Suddenly, a distant scream echoed through the tunnel, high, sharp, inhuman. Maya raised her flare. The red glow shimmered with shadows that shouldn't have moved. Then came the voice. Deep, guttural, speaking from inside their skulls. You broke the seal. Gabe trembled. Is it the same thing? No, Eleanor said. It's one of the others. They turned back, but the tunnel behind them had collapsed, sealed, trapped. The heat grew stronger. The obsidian walls now pulsed with red veins, as if something inside them was alive. Maya whispered. We're not alone anymore. They reached a chamber, circular, perfect, with a spire of glowing stone at its center. Unlike the first heart, this one was awake, not dreaming, watching. At its base were figures, stone statues at first glance, but then Eleanor stepped closer and gasped. Not statues, people, frozen in positions of agony, mouths open in silent screams, flesh turned to obsidian mid-movement, their eyes still aware beneath the glaze. What the hell is this? Gabe muttered. A warning, Eleanor said softly. They woke it before, and it took them. The stone spire pulsed, slow and steady. Eleanor approached. She could feel it again, the mind behind the fire. But this one was different. Angry. Unrestrained. Maya grabbed her arm. "We can't wake another one. We won't survive it." "We might not have a choice." The spire shimmered. "We are the memory of flame." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "You are intruders, thieves of silence. Walk no further." And then the floor cracked open. From the pit beneath, a hand reached up. Long, black, clawed. Alive. The hand clawed its way upward, obsidian fingers scraping against the ancient stone. Heat poured from the pit, pulsing like a living furnace. The chamber trembled as the unseen body began to rise. Gabe stumbled backward, his eyes wide. "What the hell is that?" "Another guardian," Eleanor said, voice barely a whisper. "But this one's not asleep." The black fingers gripped the edge of the fissure and heaved, and the creature pulled itself partially into the light. It wasn't human. Not anymore. Its body was tall and emaciated, composed of shifting black rock veined with red, as though magma coursed beneath its surface. Its face was featureless, but for a vertical slit where the mouth should be, and from within it came a sound like crackling fire and voices whispering over burning coals. "You come as the last did," it said. Curious, blind, fragile. Maya drew her knife, though it looked laughable against the thing before them. "We're not your enemy," Eleanor said carefully. "We didn't mean to wake you." "Then you should not have walked the dream." The creature stepped fully into the chamber, and the stone beneath its feet glowed red-hot. The statues around the room, the frozen explorers, began to crack, not from heat, from resonance. As the guardian approached, the obsidian figures started to shudder and then scream. One of the frozen bodies shattered, and from the dust rose something new, a creature forged from memory and pain. Its form echoed the human shape it once had, but stretched and twisted, its face locked in silent torment. The guardian extended a hand. The creature bowed to it like a knight to a king. "They're turning the dead into sentinels," Maya whispered. "We need to get out. Now," Gabe hissed. But the exit was gone. Only the spire remained, and whatever force it held. Eleanor approached it again, ignoring Maya's protests. Her fingers brushed the smooth surface, and suddenly her mind plunged inward, drawn into a flood of burning images. A city beneath the ice, swallowed by time. 9 spires forming a circle, each guarding a piece of a shattered thought. A war not of armies, but of consciousness. She saw one of the beings, taller than mountains, built of light and stone, falling into the earth like a comet, its mind fracturing as it broke the crust. The spires were the shards of that mind, and they wanted to become whole again. She snapped back into her body with a scream. The guardian turned to her. "You saw." Eleanor nodded, panting. "You're rebuilding it. You want to wake the full entity." "It was never asleep, merely broken." Maya pulled her back. "We have to fight. If we stay here, we're dead." More statues were awakening now, their cracked forms peeling apart to reveal blackened humanoids with glowing veins and hollow eyes. Gabe raised his flare. "How do we stop something that's already awake?" "We break the connection," Eleanor said. "We sever the spire from the source." "That'll kill you," Maya snapped. "Maybe. But if it wakes fully, it kills the world." The guardian moved toward them, slow and certain. Each step made the chamber tremble. From its body, sparks began to fly. Literal sparks of fire, as if its presence tore at the fabric of the space. Eleanor ran toward the spire. The guardian raised its hand, and a wave of force slammed her back into the wall. She gasped, blood in her mouth. Maya screamed and lunged with her knife. It bounced off the creature like hitting a glacier with a toothpick. Then Gabe threw his last flare, directly at the base of the spire. It struck, and something inside the stone cracked. The chamber erupted in a scream, not human, not natural. The guardian reeled. Eleanor crawled to the base. Her hands burned against the heat. She pressed her palm to the surface and willed it to stop. To sleep, to forget. And for a moment, she felt it shift. Not break, not yet, but doubt entered it. The spire began to flicker. The Guardian roared in fury and charged. But Maya was faster. She pulled a blade from her belt, the obsidian dagger they'd found in the first ruins, and drove it into the glowing veins of the creature. It shrieked, fire spewing from its back, and stumbled. Eleanor screamed, "Now!" She drove her palm into the fissure of the spire, and the world went white. White. Endless. Blinding white. For several heartbeats, there was no sound, no shape, no self. Just an overwhelming flood of emptiness, as if the world had been wiped clean. Then, pain. Eleanor gasped as sensation returned. She was lying on her back, chest heaving. The heat was gone, replaced by cold, dry air. No tremors, no screams, just silence. She sat up slowly. The chamber was intact, but different. The spire stood before her, still and lifeless. Its glow had vanished. The blackened floor around it was cracked, but the fissures no longer burned. "Gabe?" she croaked. "Maya?" No answer. She struggled to her feet, staggering like a drunk. A few meters away lay Gabe, unconscious but breathing. His coat was singed but intact. "Maya!" she called again, louder this time. There was movement by the far wall. A hand, shaking, reached out from a pile of ash and rubble. Eleanor ran. Maya's face was bloodied, her left arm limp at her side. But she was alive. "You stabbed that thing," Eleanor whispered, helping her sit up. "You saved us." Maya groaned. "Didn't know obsidian was good for demon surgery." They both laughed, weak, breathless, relief crashing through the terror. But something was wrong. The silence was too deep. The air, too still. Eleanor turned to the spire again. Its surface was dull, but faint pulses of color still shimmered beneath the stone. Not light, not heat, memory. The Guardian was gone. The reanimated statues had turned to dust, but the spire, the fractured mind of the buried entity, remained. It hadn't been destroyed, only delayed. Gabe stirred with a cough. Eleanor helped him up, and together the three surveyed the chamber. All around them were shadows burned into stone, silhouettes of figures frozen in their final moments, and among them, cracks in the floor formed lines. Lines that, from above, would resemble a symbol, a sigil, ancient, alien. The spires were never just markers. Eleanor murmured. They were circuit points. "Of what?" Gabe asked, rubbing his temple. "A consciousness, a machine mind, one that spans beneath the crust. We've only found 2 of the 9. Maya shook her head, dazed. "There are 7 more of these?" Eleanor nodded grimly. 7 more pieces, and it's trying to wake them. They moved slowly toward the passage they had entered from. To their relief, the tunnel remained open, but something had changed. Where there had once been ice, now there was glass. Frozen walls transformed by heat and pressure. Beneath the surface were shapes, vague, humanoid, fused into the walls like shadows on scorched earth. "Was that us?" Gabe asked, voice hoarse. "No," Maya said. "Others. From before. From long before. They emerged into the open. The storm above had stilled. The sky was a dull gray and ash drifted like snow. Far behind them, the spire began to emit a low hum again. Eleanor looked back, eyes full of dread. It wasn't over. As they made their way across the glacier, they spotted movement in the distance. A figure, not one of theirs. Too tall, too fluid. It turned away before they could see its face and vanished into the storm. "Did you?" Gabe started. "Yeah," Eleanor said. "I saw it. Another fragment. Another Guardian. Watching. Waiting." They reached base camp 3 hours later. The tents had collapsed, their supplies scattered. One of the sleds was missing, and the radio was nothing but static. A message had been carved into the snow by gloved hands. "Do not go below." Below it, a second line, deeper and jagged. "It's already too late." The camp was in ruins. Snow-covered torn tents, shattered supply crates, and trails of something darker. Blood, nearly black in the dim light. Eleanor knelt by one of the tracks and touched the stain, still warm. Someone, or something, had passed through recently. Gabe circled the remnants of the central tent. "No bodies?" he muttered. "No tracks going out either. Just gone." Maya found the journal belonging to Dr. Casimir. Its cover was scorched, the pages damp, ink blurred, but a final entry remained readable. "The spire sings even through the snow. We cannot sleep. We hear names. Our names. It promises remembrance, even as it devours meaning." Eleanor read it aloud, and silence followed. Then she said, almost to herself, "It doesn't just feed on flesh. It consumes identity." That night, they took shelter in what remained of the supply cave. The temperature had dropped again. Eleanor set a small fire using broken equipment and alcohol fuel. They huddled around the weak flame, the shadows dancing on the icy walls. "I don't think this is over," Maya whispered. Gabe shook his head. "That spire. It activated something, like a signal. Maybe the others heard it too." "No," Eleanor said quietly. "Not just others. Itself. It reached out to its other pieces. We may have awakened something that never fully died." A distant sound echoed. Not wind, not ice cracking. A voice, low, repeating. A chant in no language they knew, but that twisted the stomach to hear. Maya reached for her gun. "It's here again," she said. Eleanor stood up slowly, her breath frosting in the cold. "No," she said. "It never left." Minutes passed. The voice grew louder until the very ice began to hum. Then, at the cave's entrance, a shape emerged. It didn't walk. It poured into view. A figure cloaked in black mist, faceless, but shifting constantly. Where it moved, the ice hissed and melted, yet left no footprint. It stopped just meters from them. "Eleanor," it said, but not in a voice of sound, a voice inside her. She stepped forward, unable to help herself. "Eleanor," Maya cried, grabbing her arm. Too late. Her vision blurred. The world fell away. She was standing somewhere else. A plain of black sand beneath a sky of bleeding stars. Above her, the spires floated, connected by lightning. In the distance, cities burned silently. Then she saw them, the others, faces from dreams. Explorers, soldiers, archaeologists, all watching, all whispering. A tower rose before her, far larger than the spire in the ice. And at its base, carved in fire, was her name. "It knows you." She awoke gasping, back in the cave. The figure was gone. Gabe and Maya stared at her, pale and shaking. "You stopped breathing," Gabe said. "For 2 minutes. I saw," she choked. "The network, the hive. A mind that remembers everything it touches. And it's waking." Maya handed her a flask. "It said your name. Why?" "I think it marked me," Eleanor said. Gabe looked at her. "Marked you for what?" She didn't answer, because she didn't know. The next morning, they packed what they could and began the descent. The glacier had cracked overnight, great rifts forming in the ice. The landscape itself felt wrong, twisted and reformed. As they passed the ridge, Maya pointed ahead. Movement. 3 figures stood in the snow. None of them were from their team. Their clothes were wrong, early 20th century, scorched and frozen. One wore a British Army uniform, one a Soviet jacket. One had no face at all. They stared, then turned, walking silently into the fog. "Ghosts?" Gabe whispered. "No," Eleanor replied. "Witnesses." Far behind them, the sky above the spire rippled with light. It was waking others, and each one would remember a name. The air was thinner. As they descended the cracked glacier path, the oxygen levels dropped in a way that felt unnatural. Not high-altitude suffocation, but something deeper. Like the world itself was holding its breath. The sky above had changed. Where once was grey and storm-worn cloud, now a soft purple hue pulsed in steady rhythm, like a slow heartbeat. Gabe muttered, "It's not just the weather changing, it's the rules." They passed a collapsed ice wall that hadn't been there before. It had buried part of their original ascent trail. Something had collapsed from the inside. Not due to pressure, but like a tunnel had been carved behind it. The ice had teeth marks. "Something big," Maya said, examining the jagged edges. "Fresh." They didn't linger. Midday brought a strange fog. It rolled in without warning, dense and luminous. Sounds muffled. Time felt slippery. Eleanor kept checking her watch. Minutes passed, then rewound. At one point, Gabe turned to speak and paused. "Where's Maya?" he asked. She'd been 10 paces ahead. Now she was gone. They searched frantically. Calling her name yielded only echoes. Some distorted, others delayed like distant thunder. Eleanor felt the cold press against her thoughts, turning reason to mist. Then a scream, short, cut off. They ran toward the sound. They found her halfway into a fissure in the ice, arms braced against the walls, feet kicking. Something pulled from below. "Hold her!" Eleanor shouted. Gabe dropped his gear and lunged. He caught Maya's wrist just as her head was nearly pulled in. Her eyes were wide, unseeing, mouth open in a silent scream. Eleanor grabbed Gabe's belt. The three formed a desperate chain, straining against the unseen force. Then it spoke, not in words, but in pressure. Maya's mind flooded with visions. Thousands of faces, old and new, frozen in ice, all with no mouths, only eyes. Watching, she screamed. The force tugged harder. Then Eleanor screamed something she hadn't meant to. "Take me instead." Silence. The pull stopped. Maya collapsed, gasping. The fissure below hissed and sealed itself shut, the ice folding in as if never broken. They lay on the ground for minutes, hearts pounding. Maya sat up, shaking. "It wanted my name." I could hear it, scratching inside my head. Taking letters, one by one. Gabe checked her over. "You're here. You're whole. For now," Eleanor whispered. They found shelter beneath a rocky ridge. An overhang where old ice didn't quite reach. It seemed untouched by whatever strange rules applied above. Eleanor lit a small lamp. The soft glow cast flickering shadows on the stone. Maya curled into herself, wrapped in Gabe's coat. "I saw people," she murmured. But they weren't alive. They were echoes. The spire made them like memories carved from ice. They're us. They were once like us. Eleanor sat beside her. "It learns, copies, repeats." "Why?" Gabe asked. "To what end?" "Maybe it doesn't need a reason," Eleanor said. "Maybe it's just what it is. Like a storm. But this storm remembers," Maya whispered. "And now, it remembers me." That night, as they slept in turns, Eleanor dreamed. She was walking a corridor carved from bones, lit by a flame that cast no heat. Her reflection followed beside her, not in mirrors, but in shadow. It whispered her name in hundreds of voices, each one slightly off. At the corridor's end, a door waited, carved from ice. It opened by itself. Inside stood a table. Upon it, a book. She stepped closer. The pages turned on their own. Each one held names. Some she recognized, some she didn't. And on the final page, her own, but it was half erased. Still being written. She woke before dawn, breath ragged, fingers clenched. Gabe stirred. "Bad dream." "No," she said. A warning. At sunrise, the fog lifted slightly. They packed again and moved on, following the winding trail downward. But even the familiar paths were wrong now. Reformed, rearranged. Trees twisted. Shadows moved. Then Maya froze. Ahead stood a single figure. It wore a parka, thick boots, their team's insignia on the shoulder. It was Nils, but his eyes were wrong. Black voids, still and unreadable. He lifted a hand, not to wave, but to point. Behind them, They turned. The sky above the ridge boiled, and from its center came light. Not warm, not natural, just one single blinding ray. As if something had opened its eye, the sky screamed, not in sound, but in sensation. Every nerve lit up, every thought scattered like leaves in a gale. The beam of light from the sky wasn't light at all. It was awareness. It searched, scoured, stripped. Gabe staggered back. Don't look at it. But it was already too late. Eleanor's gaze had locked onto the beam. Not directly, but in the reflection of a shard of ice. Her pupils dilated. She fell to her knees, mouth slack, eyes unfocused. "Maya!" Gabe shouted, dragging her backward as the light intensified. Maya looked up. For one brief moment she saw it, not the light, but what was behind the light. A shape, too vast to be understood. Not made of matter, but of memory. It knew them, had known them from the moment they entered the glacier, and it was deciding. Then the light vanished. Just gone, as if a lid had been shut. Silence returned. Eleanor blinked slowly, breathing like someone who'd just surfaced from a deep dive. "I saw something," she whispered. "It had no face, just layers, like pages in a book, stacked, watching." They looked around. Niels was gone. No footsteps, no trace. Only the faint scent of frost and ozone where he had pointed. They pressed onward, but the path wound ever more strangely. The terrain no longer obeyed logic. Stones floated, roots twisted in the air. Gravity seemed to lurch and twist. Once, they passed a frozen tree. Upside down, its branches buried in the snow, roots clawing at the sky. It was getting colder, too, but not like any cold they knew. This cold crept inside their thoughts, sapping will, dulling memory. Gabe forgot his sister's name for a moment. Maya stopped mid-step and didn't know where she was. Only Eleanor pushed on, whispering to herself, repeating names. The names in the book from her dream. As if clinging to identity kept her grounded. Later that day, they found a gate. It rose out of the ice like a fossil, carved with symbols none of them recognized. More than 10 feet tall and half as wide, the gate had no hinges, no handles. Just a slit of darkness beyond it, like the entrance to a forgotten tomb. Maya stood frozen. "This is it." "The source?" Gabe asked. Eleanor nodded. "The spire, or whatever's beneath it." They set up camp a short distance away. No one spoke much. The silence was too loud, a pressure in their ears, a sense of waiting. That night, they didn't light a fire. The gate pulsed with faint blue light, like breath. Eleanor had first watch. At some point, the darkness beyond the gate stirred. She stood, holding her flare gun, unsure if what she saw was real. A figure in the distance, standing inside the gate, wrapped in gauze-like cloth. It looked like someone mummified alive, and it was looking straight at her. She blinked. Gone. The rest of the night passed in anxious silence. At dawn, they approached the gate. The symbols had changed. Some were now names, written in characters they didn't recognize. But that felt familiar. One of them was Maya's, and one was Eleanor's. Gabe found his name half-formed, the characters growing out of the ice like sprouting fungi. He touched it and screamed. The others pulled him back. His hand had frozen solid to the bone. "It showed me my death," Gabe said later, wrapped in bandages. "Buried alive, still breathing, listening." They knew the gate wasn't locked. It was waiting, and now it knew their names. They didn't open the gate. It opened on its own. Just before midnight, as the last embers of thought burned in their minds and the cold pressed in like a shroud, a low groan rolled across the ice. The slit of darkness in the stone split wider, not like doors swinging open, but like flesh parting. A smell came through, old, heavy, like wet earth, sealed for centuries, and something else, chanting, very soft, very slow, a dozen voices, maybe 100, all speaking the same words in a language none of them had ever heard, but that throbbed in their bones like memory. Maya stepped forward. Eleanor grabbed her wrist. "Wait, we don't know what's inside." Maya didn't answer. She was crying, but not from fear. She was smiling. "I know this place," she whispered. "I've been here. Before I was born." They entered the gate, and the world changed. Gravity shifted. The pressure in the air turned thick and golden, like honey on their skin. Light came from nowhere, or maybe from within them. The walls inside weren't stone, but memory. When you looked at them, you saw your own past, reflected and warped. Maya saw a hallway from her childhood, the door her father never let her open. Eleanor saw a hospital bed, flickering with static, and a woman's hand reaching out to her. Gabe saw a coffin, cracked and empty. He didn't tell the others. They walked deeper. The corridor opened into a vast underground cathedral, if you could call it that. A structure of bone and crystal stretching in impossible geometry. The air echoed with breathing, not theirs, but something deeper. Rhythmic, ancient. In the center of the space stood a spiral column, black and slick like obsidian. It reached up into the ceiling where no ceiling should be. Symbols moved across its surface, fluidly, like fish beneath the sea. Maya stepped forward. "It's alive." Eleanor could feel it too. "It's watching us." Gabe backed away, eyes darting. "We need to go, now. We shouldn't be here." But then came the voice. Not a voice of sound, but inside their heads. "You have come too far. You have awakened the cycle. You must pay the toll." The column began to pulse. The air turned heavy with pressure and static. Cracks spread through the ground. Then something began to emerge. From the space beneath the column, not dirt, not stone, but a pit of eyes. Dozens, then hundreds, opening all at once, blinking, watching. One eye locked onto Gabe. He screamed and ran. Maya reached out. But Gabe was already gone, swallowed by a sudden drop in the floor. His scream echoed, then was cut short with a wet snap. The floor closed. Only silence remained. Eleanor dropped to her knees. "They're testing us." "No," Maya said. "They're remembering us." "What does that mean?" Maya looked up at the column. "We're echoes to them. Echoes of lives they've already lived. Long ago, but something changed. One of us doesn't belong in the memory." A door opened on the far side of the cathedral, tall, round, rimmed in gold. The chanting returned, louder now, and the language was no longer foreign. It was their voices, speaking things they hadn't said, yet words from their future. Eleanor shuddered. "I want to leave." "You can't," Maya said. She pointed to the ground. Where Gabe had fallen, his name had vanished from the stone. The column turned toward Eleanor, and it began to speak again. "She is not complete." The voice of the column, no, the presence, spoke directly into their blood, bypassing ears and thoughts. Eleanor clutched her head, stumbling backward. "What do you mean?" Maya demanded, stepping between Eleanor and the twisting obsidian. The presence answered in silence. Instead of words, it sent images. Visions exploded in Eleanor's mind, a room full of mirrors, each showing a different version of her, some older, some younger, some smiling, some weeping. One version had no face at all. "You're being unmade," Maya whispered, staring at Eleanor like she was seeing her for the first time. "Unmade?" Eleanor croaked. "You're a paradox," the voice whispered again. "Your existence has fractured the memory. A toll must be paid." Suddenly, the cathedral shook. The spiral column's base cracked open, revealing a staircase of black bone descending into darkness. Without a word, Maya grabbed Eleanor's hand and pulled her forward. The spiral whispered beneath their feet. As they descended, the chanting above faded, replaced by something worse, whispers in their own voices, speaking secrets they had never told anyone. Maya heard herself say, "I let him drown." Eleanor heard. "She died because I ran." She stopped. "That wasn't me. I didn't." But the voices didn't lie. They remembered. Each step down stripped something away. Memories, certainty, hope. Eleanor began to feel hollow. Her name slipped from her mind, and for a moment she couldn't remember who Maya was. Maya? "I'm still here," Maya said, but her voice sounded far away, as if submerged underwater. They reached the bottom. It was a chamber, circular and smooth, like the inside of a skull. In the center, a mirror floated above a basin of thick, dark liquid. The reflection didn't show their bodies. It showed what was left of their souls. Eleanor stepped forward, trembling. The image stared back, warped, incomplete. Her face flickered, her eyes bled shadows, her mouth was sealed. "This is what they see," Maya whispered. "What the memory has turned you into." "I don't understand," Eleanor said, tears forming. "Your death already happened," Maya said, her eyes wide. "You just haven't caught up to it." A ripple spread across the mirror. From within the basin, hands emerged, not human hands, but pale, boneless things that clung to the rim like dying spiders. The air screamed. The voices returned. "Give us what is broken. We will take the fracture and seal the cycle." The hands reached for Eleanor. Maya stepped in front of her. "Take me instead." The mirror cracked. "She is already dead." Eleanor gasped. Maya turned to her. "You didn't come back from that cliff, Elle. You fell. I tried to save you, but your body was never found." Eleanor stepped back. "That's not true. I was at your apartment. I remember—" "No," Maya said. "You remember wanting to be there. The mountain claimed you." The mirror exploded into shards of light. Time folded in on itself. And then, peace. The chamber brightened. The whispers stopped. The hands vanished. And Eleanor, she stood alone. The room was empty. No mirror, no Maya. Just a single stone tablet, glowing faintly. On it, one name was etched, Maya Escher. Eleanor stood frozen before the glowing tablet. Her mind was a whirlpool of broken memories, unraveling truths and questions that had no beginning. Maya was dead. And she didn't even know if she was alive. The silence was unbearable. No echoes, no whispers, no distant hum of the storm outside, just a vacuum, like the world itself had forgotten to breathe. She stepped toward the stone. The moment her fingertips brushed its surface, a door appeared. Seamless, carved directly into the wall, glowing with the same pale light. She didn't question it. She walked through. The corridor on the other side was narrow, suffocating, carved from polished black stone that seemed to absorb light. The walls pulsed faintly, like they were alive, breathing. As she moved forward, the air grew colder, and behind her, the door sealed shut without a sound. Her footsteps were muffled by something that wasn't quite air, not quite shadow. And then, up ahead, a figure, slumped against the wall, a body. She rushed forward, heart pounding. It was Lars, the group's medic. His coat was soaked, but not with blood. Ink. Thick, black ink oozed from his mouth and eyes. His hands were clenched around a notebook. Eleanor dropped to her knees and pried it from his grip. The pages were smeared, torn, but one line was still readable. "It's not a place. It's a memory trying to become real." She staggered back. A sound rose behind her. A wet dragging like something without bones was crawling toward her. Eleanor turned. The hallway was no longer empty. Something was coming. It didn't have a shape. A fog of limbs, teeth, and flickers of faces that weren't whole. Not walking, sliding, like a thought pushed into flesh. She ran. The passage bent and shifted, a maze alive and hungry. Behind her, the creature shrieked, not with anger, but with recognition. It knew her. The notebook pulsed in her hand. The ink was bleeding into her skin. She burst into a larger room, vaulted like a crypt. In the center stood a well, its rim carved with the same symbols that adorned the pillar above. She had seen this in a dream, or was it a memory? Without thinking, she dropped the notebook in. The ink inside it howled. The creature at the hallway's edge froze. Its form quivered, unstable. The well glowed brighter. Then the creature spoke, in Lars's voice. You weren't supposed to be here. Eleanor backed away. What are you? You, it said, with a dozen mouths. All of you. The fragments. The lies you buried. We are what remains when you forget. The creature stepped closer. You let us in. Suddenly, the well erupted. Light, not warm, but cold, blinding and surgical, shot into the chamber. The creature wailed and began to disintegrate, torn apart by truth made visible. Eleanor screamed as the light wrapped around her, but it didn't hurt. It healed. Her thoughts aligned. Her name returned. Maya's voice, clear as glass, echoed in her mind. Remember who you are. She stood tall, and when the light faded, the creature was gone. The notebook remained on the ground, its pages now blank. But something was written on the well's edge now. A new symbol, not from the ancient alphabet. It was a name. Eleanor Rhine. The name etched into the stone made Eleanor tremble. Eleanor Rhine, not just a mark, a claim. This place, whatever it truly was, had named her. A recognition, or a sentence. She stepped back from the well, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The chamber around her was still bathed in the residual glow of the light, but the warmth had not returned. The silence was absolute. Deeper now, heavier. Suddenly, a low groan rumbled through the walls, like the mountain was waking up. And then, she heard something she thought she'd never hear again. Voices. At first it was only echoes. Distant cries, laughter, sobs, threads of sound from lives long since extinguished. But among them, real voices rose. Eleanor! She turned. There, at the far side of the room, a crack in the wall. Through it, movement, a torchlight. Shadows. It's Adam! The voice cried again. She ran. Her shoulders slammed into the crevice and squeezed through. The air beyond was freezing and her boots crunched over ancient gravel. On the other side was a narrow tunnel, and within it, Adam, alive, bruised, breathing hard. God, Eleanor, I thought you were dead. They crashed into each other, hugging with such force it knocked the air from their lungs. Adam looked shaken, but not broken. Where are the others? She asked. James is gone. Swallowed by something. I think he knew it was coming. He stayed behind to give us time. Us? Adam nodded. Isolde's still with me. She's hurt, but fighting. Eleanor's heart swelled. 3 survivors. Maybe more. Maybe this wasn't the end. Not yet. They moved together through the tunnel, heading toward the faint pulse of blue light that Adam had followed when he got separated. The walls here were different. No glyphs, no whispers, just stone. But something had changed. A pressure. A hum just beneath the skin, like the space was breathing around them. They entered a chamber with sharp angles, completely unlike the ones before. It was man-made, or at least shaped by tools. In the center stood a monolith, partially cracked, humming with power. Isolde was leaning against it, blood on her forehead, but smiling weakly as they entered. Still alive? She croaked. Eleanor ran to her and knelt. We all are, for now. Good, Isolde whispered. Because it's waking up. They all turned. The monolith cracked. A pulse of heat rolled across the room. The walls quivered. Symbols flared to life, different from the others. Sharper, modern, scientific. What is this place? Adam whispered. Eleanor stared at the pulsing stone, and the answer fell from her lips before she knew she had it. A seal. A scream erupted from behind them. They turned to see a shadowy rift open in midair. A tear in reality, swirling like a whirlpool, and from it, something tried to push through. A silhouette, human-shaped but flickering. Limbs bent wrong, head twisted, eyes like coals. Isolde shrieked and pushed herself upright. We can't let it open. But how do we close it? Adam shouted, backing away from the breach. Eleanor stepped toward the monolith. The symbols on it changed, responding to her presence. It was connected to her. All of this was. She reached out. Her fingers brushed the stone, and the world shifted. A flood of memories that weren't hers. A laboratory. Scientists. Test subjects screaming. A gateway designed to pierce memory, to make forgotten truths physical. The original expedition, the first breach, the madness that followed. They had opened this once before and failed to close it because they tried to seal it from the outside. But Eleanor saw now. The only way to lock it was from within. She turned to Adam and Isolde. "I have to go in?" "No," Adam shouted. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." The rift widened. The creature within was almost through. Eleanor took a deep breath, then leapt. The breach swallowed her whole. Inside was chaos, floating memories, screaming shadows, echoes of the dead and dying. But at the center was a core, a shining, humming sphere of pure thought. The seed of the breach. She wrapped herself around it, heart pounding, mind unraveling. And then she did what no one had ever done. She remembered everything. Herself, the others, the pain, the joy, every truth buried in ice and time. She whispered a single word. "Close." The core shattered into light. The breach collapsed. On the outside, Adam and Isolde watched the rift twist violently and vanish. The silence returned. And then, slowly, so did the light. The mountain held its breath, and then exhaled. They were safe, but Eleanor was gone. The rift was gone. The creature, the howling winds, the impossible whispers, all swallowed by silence. Only Adam and Isolde remained, sitting in the cold chamber lit by the afterglow of Eleanor's sacrifice. Neither spoke for a long time. The stone monolith, now dormant, stood like a grave marker. "She's gone," Isolde whispered finally. Her voice was cracked, exhausted. Adam nodded, staring at the place where the breach had been, his hand clenched into a fist. "She saved us. She saved everything." No one replied. There was no one left to. The silence stretched on, deep and crushing. And then a sound. Faint. Thump. Thump. It was a heartbeat. Adam looked around, startled. Isolde raised her head, confused. Thump. Thump. The sound didn't come from them. It came from the stone. The monolith glowed faintly. A soft pulse, like something inside was stirring. Adam stepped forward. No, not again. But it wasn't dark energy or another breach. It was light, warm, steady. And then, beneath the stone, a crack appeared. Not like before. This was gentle. A seam opened, and from within emerged a flickering orb of golden light. It hovered above the stone for a moment, then floated down, toward them. Adam and Isolde stood frozen. The light pulsed again, then split into 3 smaller lights. They hovered like fireflies. Then they formed into words. "She is not gone." The message burned into their minds, clear as a voice. Adam stepped forward. "What do you mean? Where is she?" No answer, just the lights, gently pulsing. Isolde's voice was a whisper. "The breach collapsed, but maybe she didn't die. Maybe she became part of it, of what sealed it." Adam looked at the orb. "Then we have to get her back." Another word formed in the air. "No." The lights dimmed, then formed again. She chose. Adam's shoulders slumped. He understood. She hadn't been taken. She had given herself. But then the lights moved again, swirling before forming one last message. "Return to the surface. The mountain has given back what it can." The lights faded into the monolith, and the stone fell silent. Hours passed. The way out was not easy to find, but somehow they knew where to go. The tunnels, once shifting and labyrinthine, were now still. The mountain no longer tried to confuse them. It had let them go. Isolde leaned on Adam as they walked. Her wounds ached, but her spirit was stronger. They passed empty chambers, frozen murals, silent echoes of the dead. All had changed. Nothing whispered now. The ice no longer sang. Just silence, but not the dreadful kind. The silence felt peaceful. At last, they reached the exit. A thin crack of sunlight shone through the ice wall. Adam pushed through it with trembling hands. Cold wind hit his face. But it was the real wind, the kind he hadn't felt in what felt like a lifetime. He turned back to Isolde, helping her out. They stood at the edge of the mountain, overlooking endless white snow. But above them, the sky was no longer dark. It was dawn. Pink light brushed the horizon. The storm that had sealed the mountain for weeks had vanished. They were alone, but alive. And the mountain, once a tomb, was silent. For the first time in perhaps centuries, at peace. The descent from the mountain took 3 days. Adam and Isolde moved slowly, their bodies weakened, but their minds clearer than ever. Each step away from the temple felt like shedding layers of shadow. The landscape remained cruel. Ice cliffs, biting wind, endless white, but no longer hostile. The mountain had let them go. They camped under the stars, now visible again in a clean sky. The aurora danced overhead, no longer the warped, screaming faces they had once seen, but pure, pale green arcs. Nature, as it was meant to be. They reached the edge of the glacier on the 3rd day. There, in a clearing of ice and stone, stood a familiar object. The helicopter, still broken, half buried in snow. But it wasn't alone. A flare burned nearby, red and fresh. And voices, human voices. A rescue team. Isolde cried when she saw them. Rough men in thermal gear, faces stunned at the sight of survivors. Radio static filled the air. Adam didn't say much. He simply let himself be guided, eyes locked on the mountain behind. The team treated their wounds, wrapped them in blankets, gave them warm drinks and food, but none of that could reach the frozen part of Adam's soul. He turned to one of the rescue officers. "How did you find us?" The man blinked. "We didn't. We were responding to a beacon. Distress signal. It started 3 days ago." Adam frowned. "We never activated any beacon." The man shrugged. "Then someone else did. Back in the base camp, a small outpost far below the glacier, they were met with disbelief. Out of the 14-member expedition, only 2 had returned. And the stories they told, the whispers, the deaths, the creature, the rift, were too strange, too unreal for the officials to accept. "You must have hallucinated. Altitude sickness, trauma," they said. Adam didn't argue. He had no interest in proving anything. But one thing was real, the data. Before leaving the temple, Adam had recovered Eleanor's satchel. Inside were her journals, a hard drive, and sealed vials of strange, glowing ice. He handed them over to the scientific committee without a word. Let them see, let them wonder, let them fear. 2 weeks passed. They were flown to a hospital in Oslo, then questioned by authorities and eventually released under psychological watch. They were told not to speak to the press. Adam didn't care. He and Isolde stayed in the same recovery center. At night they spoke softly, recounting details, remembering faces. Callum, Ben, Varga, Eleanor. Each death replayed like a haunting film. But in those memories, there was also warmth, shared fire, laughter intense, silent awe beneath ancient ice. And sometimes, when Adam woke in the dead of night, he thought he heard her voice. Not in words, but in feeling, a presence, still watching. A month later, Adam received a package. No return address. Inside was a small box, and inside the box, a photograph. It was one they had taken early in the journey, long before the horror. The full expedition team smiling beside the chopper. But something was different. There, in the corner of the image, barely visible, was a faint light, shimmering, golden, almost like a spark caught in the film. It hovered just behind Eleanor's shoulder. Adam stared at it for a long time, then smiled. The room was white, sterile, quiet. Adam sat in a chair too stiff to be comfortable, across from a table too clean to feel real. Behind the mirror wall, he knew they were watching. Government officials, scientists, security analysts. They called it a debriefing, but it felt like an interrogation. He had already told them everything. Twice. Now they wanted details, patterns, proof, and most of all they wanted to know. What did you bring back? A man entered. Early 50s, sharp-suited, expression unreadable. He didn't introduce himself. He placed a photo on the table. It was the rift, the black chasm beneath the temple, taken from Eleanor's camera. We analyzed the dimensions, the man said. It doesn't conform to any known geological formation. Adam said nothing. We also studied the ice samples. They're unstable, reactive to sound frequencies. That shouldn't be possible. Still, Adam said nothing. The man leaned forward. What you saw up there, was it alive? Adam's voice was low. It was something. Back at the recovery center, Isolde sat in a sunlit garden, sketching in charcoal. Her hands moved with precision, drawing the symbols from the walls of the temple. Spirals, circles, runes. Her notebook was filled with page after page of them. An elderly psychiatrist passed by. Still drawing the language? Isolde smiled faintly. It's not a language. Then what is it? A warning, she whispered. Left behind by those who couldn't leave. The psychiatrist watched her for a long moment before walking away. She turned the page, drew a new shape, a key. That evening, Adam and Isolde met in the quiet library of the center. He handed her a sealed envelope. From the government lab, they're sending the samples to Geneva. Deep storage. They're afraid, Isolde said. They should be. They sat in silence, the weight of knowledge pressing between them. What if it wasn't just one creature? She asked. Adam looked up. What if it's a gate? 6 months later, a storm tore across the North Atlantic, and under its cover, a convoy moved across the glacier, 3 snow tractors, 2 mobile labs, and a dozen personnel under heavy security, all bearing the seal of the European Geoscience Authority. They had returned to the mountain. Not Adam, not Isolde, but others, scientists, soldiers, specialists, and one man in a black coat who never gave his name. Their mission: investigate the rift, extract samples, determine threat level. They called it Operation Pale Gate. Deep within the ruined temple, they descended into the black chasm with ropes and lights. The walls were slick with ancient ice. At the bottom, the rift. Still open, still humming. Their instruments failed to work near it. Batteries drained, lights flickered. And one man, a geologist named Rayner, began speaking in a strange tongue none could understand. He collapsed moments later, blood pouring from his nose and ears. They pulled him up. He never woke again. The team almost turned back, but the man in black spoke quietly. We've come too far, so they stayed. Above, a drone scanned the area. It caught movement, faint, fleeting, like a shimmer across the snow. They dismissed it as an error, but the man in black didn't. That night, the temperature dropped. The wind died, and a sound began to rise from the glacier, low, rhythmic, like a chant. A pulse. The mountain was breathing, and something beneath it was listening. They kept Rayner's body in the medical unit, wrapped in thermal foil and sealed tight. Nobody slept that night. The humming from the rift had grown louder, almost a whisper now, threading through the steel walls of the mobile labs. By morning, they noticed something strange. Rayner's eyes were open. He was dead. Of that they were certain. No pulse, no brain activity. But his eyes had opened sometime during the night, wide and glassy, staring up at the ceiling. The medic screamed. Inside those eyes, something moved. The man in black ordered the body to be burned. Immediately, the scientists protested. "This is a specimen! We should study it!" But he didn't argue. He simply pulled out his clearance badge and repeated, "Burn it, now." They did. And as the body turned to ash in the containment furnace, the rift's hum dropped into silence. Later that day, in the communications tent, the technician reported an anomaly. "I'm getting a transmission," she said. "But it's not ours." She patched it through. It was a voice. Faint, fragmented, old. They'll leave. The door shut. Everyone froze. The man in black didn't flinch. "Where's it coming from?" someone asked. The technician stared at her screen. "Coordinates match our location, but what? There's no active transmitter anywhere nearby." Down in the chasm, the lights flickered again. And somewhere in the ice, Raynor's voice whispered back. They made the decision at dawn, despite the warnings. Voices in the static, shifting shadows, the eyes of a dead man. They would go down into the rift. The team split. Half would remain above, monitoring from the surface. The other half, 6 members, would descend. Equipped with thermal suits, reinforced helmets, EM shields, and personal transmitters. Among them, Dr. Nadia Helm, linguist, Lieutenant Felix Jurgensen, security lead, Pavel Ivanov, engineer, Asha Kaul, biologist, 2 soldiers from the Norwegian Special Forces, and the man in black. They called the descent point Zone Echo. Ropes lowered them into the abyss. The ice walls seemed to breathe as they went deeper. Lights flickered. Their breath fogged their visors. At 150 meters, the signal began to break. At 200 meters, the first scream echoed from below. Nadia flinched. What was that? No heat signatures, Pavel whispered. No movement. But Asha pointed to the ice. Inside it, faintly visible. Faces. Twisted. Frozen mid-scream. The team fell silent. "We go on," the man in black ordered. At 300 meters, the rift opened up into a massive underground chamber, cavernous and ancient. Crystals grew like jagged teeth from the walls. And on the far end, a door, 10 meters tall, made of black stone, etched with the same runes Isolde had drawn months ago. "It's real," Nadia said. "The language, the warnings, all of it." "No more theory," the man in black said. "Now we open it." They approached the door. Suddenly, Pavel collapsed, clutching his chest, eyes wide. "Something's in my head," he gasped. Asha screamed. From the shadows behind the crystals, something moved. Thin, long-limbed, made of ice and smoke. It watched. It waited. The soldiers raised their rifles. Then the door began to open on its own, and from the darkness beyond, a voice came through. "You are not meant to return." The door opened silently, revealing a passage carved into obsidian black stone. Cold mist poured out like breath from a crypt. The air inside was dry and thin, too ancient to be natural. The man in black stepped forward first. No hesitation, no fear. The others followed, rifles up, lights scanning every surface. The walls were etched with symbols, some glowing faintly with internal light. Nadia ran her fingers across them, whispering translations. Gate, sleep, sacrifice, host. "What the hell is this place?" Felix muttered. "Not a temple," Nadia answered. "A prison." They passed through corridors lined with alcoves, each holding a statue-like figure, humanoid, tall, emaciated, frozen in poses of agony. But their eyes seemed aware. "Are these real?" Asha asked. "No heat, no movement," Pavel said, checking his scanner. "But I don't like this." Then one of the soldiers dropped his rifle. He was staring at something only he could see. He spoke in a voice not his own. It dreamed still. Then he shot himself. Chaos erupted. Asha screamed. Felix tackled her to the ground as the second soldier began shaking, violently convulsing. His skin turned pale. His eyes rolled back. The man in black stepped forward calmly and snapped the man's neck. No hesitation. He turned to the rest. "We don't stop. We're close." At the end of the corridor, they reached the chamber. Circular. Vast. A pit in the center. Above it, suspended in the air by black chains, a cocoon made of bone, ice, and what looked like strands of hair. It pulsed, slowly, like it was breathing. From within, they heard it. A whisper, a voice not made for human ears. "Feed me." Nadia collapsed. Asha backed away, crying. The man in black knelt at the edge of the pit. "This is what we came for." The cocoon pulsed, slow, steady, alive. Something ancient moved inside it, something aware. Nadia sat against the wall, hands over her ears, whispering to herself in dead tongues. Her eyes bled slightly. Asha tried to help her, but every time she got closer to the cocoon, her limbs began to shake violently. "It's in my thoughts," she gasped. "It's eating them." Felix kept his rifle aimed at the cocoon, sweating through his helmet. "We have to go. This thing, it's not dormant. It's starving." The man in black stood unmoved. He was speaking softly to the cocoon. No one could hear what he said, but the cocoon pulsed faster in response. "Who are you talking to?" Felix demanded. The man turned. "There are things older than time," he said. "Older than death. This one waited beneath the ice. Now it calls." "For what?" Asha asked, voice trembling. The man's eyes were distant. "Hosts." Suddenly, the ground trembled. From the walls, cracks split open. Black mist poured through, bringing with it whispers, cold and full of malice. One tendril wrapped around Pavel's leg and pulled him screaming into the darkness. Felix fired blindly. Bullets vanished into the fog. Nadia stood, eyes rolled back, and walked toward the cocoon. "No!" Asha ran after her. But Nadia turned and spoke in a voice that wasn't hers. "She has already been chosen." Then the cocoon opened. Inside was not flesh, not bone, just eyes. A swirling mass of them, thousands, watching, blinking, whispering as one. "One must stay, one must feed." A tendril lashed out, grabbing Nadia. She didn't scream. She smiled. As it pulled her into the cocoon, the whispers stopped. The cocoon sealed itself again. The black mist retreated. Silence fell. Then, like nothing had happened, the air grew still. Felix stood shaking. Asha collapsed. Only the man in black remained composed. "She accepted it," he said. "She kept it asleep. For now." The silence in the chamber was unbearable. No whispers, no movement. Just the low hum of the sealed cocoon. Felix's hands trembled. Asha sat with her head in her hands, breathing fast, shallow. Pavel was gone. Nadia was gone. Only 3 of them remained now. And one of them, the man in black, was no longer just human. He turned toward the cocoon, then to Felix and Asha. "You've seen the threshold," he said. "But you've only touched the surface." Felix raised his rifle, shaking. "You knew this would happen. You brought us here to feed it." "I brought you here to test it," the man said. "To see if it still remembers, if it still needs." "Needs what?" Asha snapped. The man smiled faintly. "Faith, fear, flesh." The ground began to tremble again, but not from beneath them, from above. A deep groaning echoed through the stone halls, the sound of the glacier above fracturing. "The ritual's not done," the man whispered. "It stirs now, and it hungers." He reached into his coat and pulled out a long, jagged blade carved from black stone. Felix fired. The man moved like smoke, sidestepping, impossibly fast. He slammed Felix against the wall with one hand. "You cannot kill what was never alive." Asha screamed and ran. She darted through the corridor, ignoring the statues, the whispers rising again. Her only thought was escape. Sunlight, air. But at the next junction, she stopped. Nadia, standing, breathing, but different. Eyes black, veins glowing faint blue. She looked at Asha and smiled. "I'm still me, Ash." No, you're not." "I saw it. I understand now." She stepped forward. Asha backed away, heart pounding. "It only wants to sleep, but it must be fed. And someone must stay." Back in the chamber, Felix struggled to his feet. The man in black walked to the cocoon and touched it gently. A faint light pulsed from the contact and left a mark on his palm. A brand, smoking and red. "It chose her," he said, "but it marked me." He turned to Felix with eyes that no longer blinked. "Now I carry it." The mark on the man's palm glowed brighter with each breath he took. Felix pressed his back to the wall, battered and dazed. The cold stone behind him felt warmer than the gaze of the man now facing him, if he could still be called a man. "You think you're in control?" Felix growled. "That thing owns you now." The man tilted his head. "It does not own me. It chose me." A faint rumble echoed through the ground. The cocoon pulsed again, this time slower, calmer. It had fed, but it had not been sated. Meanwhile, Asha backed away from Nadia, still not believing her eyes. The glowing veins, the black irises, the calm smile. They didn't belong to her friend. Nadia raised her hand. "It doesn't have to end in fear," she said. "It only wants balance." "Balance?" Asha spat. "It killed Pavel. It ate you." Nadia nodded slowly. "Yes, it devoured who I was. But it gave something back. Sight from understanding. Peace." She took a step closer. "It needs a seal, Asha. A living one. Someone marked. Someone willing." A distant crack split the ceiling. Dust and ice rained down. Asha looked up. Fragments of ancient symbols revealed beneath the surface of the dome. Runes. Warnings. She whispered, "This place was a prison." Nadia didn't answer. Instead, she opened her arms. "You can still leave, if one of us stays. If I stay, it will sleep again." Asha hesitated. Her breath fogged the air between them. Then she reached into her pack and pulled out a flare. "Then sleep alone." She struck it. The red flame burst to life, and she threw it at the cocoon. The flame hissed across the chamber and struck the cocoon's surface. For a moment, nothing. Then a scream, deep, agonizing. The cocoon writhed like a living thing, its surface splitting open with dozens of jagged mouths. The eyes returned, wide, furious, watching. The man in black fell to his knees, clutching his marked hand. "You fools, you've woken it!" Felix dragged himself toward Asha. "We run," he gasped. "Now." Nadia fell to the ground, screaming, blue light pouring from her eyes and mouth. The cocoon began to pulse erratically. Runes on the walls flared to life, lighting the chamber with ancient fire. The glacier above rumbled again, louder, closer. The prison was breaking. As Felix and Asha sprinted toward the upper corridor, the man in black howled behind them. "You can't stop it now. There's nowhere it won't reach." But Asha didn't look back, not even when the cocoon screamed her name. The tunnels shook with such force that the ice cracked beneath Felix's boots. He and Asha ran without speaking, breath steaming in the frigid air. Behind them, the echoes of the cocoon's rage surged through the passageways, howls that did not belong to any living thing. Ahead, the corridor split. "Left!" Asha shouted, remembering a shaft that led back to the upper level. They turned sharply, but a blast of wind knocked Felix to the floor. He slid on the ice, narrowly avoiding the edge of a deep fissure that had opened in the floor. Something screamed from inside the crack. Asha reached for him. "Come on, get up." Felix gritted his teeth and pulled himself to his feet. Together, they ran again, wounded, exhausted, and chased. Above them, the glacier cracked like thunder. The ceiling began to cave. A wall of frozen debris collapsed behind them as they passed through a narrow archway. Shards of ancient symbols and bones scattered around their feet. "This place is coming down," Felix shouted. Asha nodded, coughing. "We get out, seal the tunnel. That's the only way." But behind them, footsteps, slow, uneven. They turned. Nadia, still glowing faintly, eyes dimmer now. Blood trickled from her nose. But she still moved, dragging one leg, arms twitching. "You shouldn't have done that," she said. "You made it angry." Asha stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "Nadia, fight it. You're stronger than it." Nadia paused. Her body trembled. "I tried, but it's in me, in everything down here." She raised a hand, and the walls groaned in response. Felix lifted his rifle. "Don't make me do this." Nadia blinked. For a second, she was just... "Nadia, tell my brother, I'm sorry." Then her veins flared bright blue again, and she charged. Asha screamed. Felix fired. 3 shots. Nadia collapsed at their feet, gasping. The light faded from her skin. The energy, gone. She looked up at Asha. Thank you. Then she was still. The ground shook harder. The air turned to dust. Asha dropped to her knees, sobbing. Felix grabbed her shoulder. We have to go, now. They sprinted through the rising storm of ice and rock. At last, they saw it. A narrow shaft leading upward, dim daylight pouring through. They climbed, slipping, scrambling, coughing. The tunnel shook violently as the chamber below gave way. Then, they burst out into light. Snow, wind, the mountain sky. They were out. But even as they collapsed into the snow, they turned to look back at the ruined shaft. The ground rumbled one last time, a long, shuddering breath, like a creature settling in its tomb. Then silence. Felix lay back, eyes wide at the clouded sky. We sealed it, barely. Asha clutched Nadia's necklace in her hand. She stayed. So we could leave. The storm began to fade. But somewhere far below, something still breathed, waiting. The mountain was silent now. Felix and Asha sat by a jagged outcrop of rock, wrapped in emergency blankets, breath steaming in the still air. The storm had passed. Snowflakes drifted lazily, covering the torn earth with a fragile calm. Asha hadn't spoken in nearly 20 minutes. She held Nadia's necklace tightly in her palm, thumb brushing over the small carved stone. It was warm, strangely so. Felix stared down the slope. In the distance, the rest of the ice shelf had collapsed, burying the lower sections of the tunnel under tons of debris. It's over, he said softly, but Asha shook her head. Not yet. A faint vibration trembled through the rock beneath them. Felix stiffened. You feel that? Asha nodded. It's still alive. They stood together and looked toward the horizon. The glacier stretched far beyond their sight, miles of ice hiding what remained below. We buried it, Felix said. That should have been enough. No, Asha whispered. We just made it angry. She opened her palm. The necklace glowed faintly again. A sigil was beginning to form on her skin, identical to the one Nadia had. Felix stepped back, alarmed. No, Asha, don't let it take you. But Asha didn't move. Her face was calm. I think. I was marked from the beginning. Flashback. A memory surged to the surface. Asha as a child, lost in a forest. She remembered following a voice no one else had heard. The dreams of an ancient door sealed beneath roots. Her mother's whispers, always warning her to stay away from ice, from silence, from deep places. She had always felt it, a calling. And now it was answering back. Felix took her arm. You can fight it. Nadia almost did. We'll find help. Asha shook her head. You saw what it does to people. If it's inside me already, I need to choose how it ends. She turned away from him and looked at the distant ridge. There's more beneath the glacier. What we found was just the first chamber. Felix went pale. How do you know that? Asha closed her eyes. Because it showed me. Suddenly, a drone buzzed above them. A searchlight swept the snow. Felix looked up. Rescue. Asha squinted. Too early. No one should be here yet. From beyond the ridge, the black shape of a helicopter rose, bearing no markings. Felix and Asha exchanged a glance. Then the radio clipped to Felix's belt crackled to life. Expedition 7, we see you. Hold position. A pause. We're here for the artifact. Do not attempt to leave. Felix stepped back, shielding Asha. What the hell is this? Asha didn't speak. Her gaze was fixed on the approaching helicopter, and deep beneath the snow, the cocoon pulsed once more. The black helicopter touched down in a flurry of snow, rotors slicing the silence. Figures in dark gear emerged. No insignia, no words. Just movement. Purposeful. Trained. Felix stepped in front of Asha instinctively. One of the soldiers raised a hand. Felix Monroe, Asha Rai, come with us. Who are you? Felix barked. The soldier didn't answer. Another pointed a weapon toward them, non-lethal but clear in intent. Asha looked at Felix. If we run, they shoot. Felix clenched his jaw. And if we go, they take what they came for, she said, and leave the rest behind. They exchanged a look, then slowly raised their hands. Inside the chopper, the noise dulled to a mechanical hum. A man waited in the rear seat, wearing a long coat, face shadowed by sunglasses, even though the light was dim. His voice was calm. You made it farther than anyone else. Felix said nothing. The man continued. We've been monitoring the anomaly for years, watching the magnetic shifts, the gravitational irregularities. Your team, well, let's just say, you opened a door. Who are you? Asha asked, voice cold. A preservationist, he said. Some things aren't meant to be touched. Felix leaned forward. Then why are you here? To clean up, the man said, removing his glasses. His eyes were pale, cloudy, almost inhuman. And to contain what you awakened. The chopper lifted. Below, so the ice shimmered with unnatural patterns, pulsing faintly in rhythm, like a heartbeat under glass. The man looked at Asha. You've been marked. I didn't ask for it. No one ever does, he replied. She narrowed her eyes. So what now? You kill me? Lock me away? The man tilted his head. That depends. Can you hear it now? Asha paused, and then nodded slowly. Yes. Inside her head, the voice was whispering again. It didn't threaten. It pleaded. Free me. And in that instant, she understood that it wasn't just ancient. It was trapped. The helicopter banked eastward, away from the glacier, heading toward a ridge hidden from satellite mapping. Snow swept past the windows, but below, the mountain opened into a chasm of concrete, an angular facility half buried in ice. Felix stared. What is this place? The man in the coat answered flatly. Vault-7. Asha's eyes narrowed. You have more than one? The man didn't respond. The chopper descended. At the base of the crevasse, 2 large doors opened into the rock. Lights flickered within. Men and women in clean suits waited behind security gates. This is where we bring things we don't understand, the man said. Things that shouldn't exist. Inside, the facility was a maze of corridors, labs, observation rooms. Everything was white, clinical, cold. Asha noticed the sealed doors labeled only with code names. Orpheus, CT-801, Project Harrow. Felix whispered, This is a prison. No, the man corrected. A quarantine. They stopped at a reinforced door. Asha turned to him. You've known about this thing the whole time. The man didn't deny it. Since 1983, she stepped toward him. And you let us go in blind. You were expendable, he said simply. Asha moved to punch him. Felix grabbed her arm. Don't, he said. He's not worth it. The door opened with a hiss. Inside was a large observation chamber. On the far side, inside a thick containment cell, a fragment of the cocoon pulsed with dim red light. Felix took a step back. You moved it. We recovered part of it before the collapse, the man replied. This is the only piece we could extract. The rest is lost. For now. Asha stared at it. The hum in her skull grew louder. She didn't speak, but her thoughts echoed. It's calling the rest of itself. Suddenly, alarms began to flash red. A voice crackled over the intercom. Containment breach, sub-level 3. The man's calm broke. What? A screen lit up behind them. Security footage showed a hallway bursting open, liquid shadows seeping from a ruptured chamber. Screaming, the cocoon inside the cell shuddered. Then, in a voice only Asha could hear, I am no longer alone. Red sirens cast the lab in pulses of warning light. Guards shouted over the intercoms. The containment breach spread like rot. Cameras blinked offline, one after another. Felix grabbed Asha's arm. We need to get out of here, now. The man in the coat didn't move. If we leave, it gets out. Asha turned to him. Then seal the vault. Bury it again. The man's face was pale now. We tried. In 1987, it came back. She looked at him with growing horror. You knew this would happen. He didn't answer. Behind them, another monitor flickered. One of the sealed rooms, Project Harrow, was wide open. Inside, something moved. The cocoon fragment pulsed violently. From it, a wave of soundless pressure slammed against the glass. The lights shattered. Technicians screamed and fled. Felix shouted over the noise. "It's waking up." "No," Asha said, eyes wide. "It's joining." The man in the coat pulled a remote from his belt and slammed a button. Collapse protocol initiated. Vault lockdown in 300 seconds. Metal plates began to descend from the ceilings. Blast doors groaned into place. Asha turned to him. "You're locking us in." "I'm locking it in," he growled. "You can still escape if you run." They ran. Hallways flashed red. Sprinklers hissed. Alarms howled. As they rounded a corner, a black mass slammed against a window, a shadow in the shape of a man, with no face, just a gaping void. It shrieked like glass breaking in reverse. Felix pulled Asha into a stairwell. "Up, go!" Behind them, containment doors crashed shut, one by one. The thing chased with impossible speed, flickering like it was blinking through space. Asha stumbled. The voice returned in her skull. "Closer, I need more." She screamed, clutched her head, but kept running. At the top of the stairs, emergency lights revealed a narrow corridor leading to the launch bay. A final countdown echoed. 1 minute to collapse. Ahead, the steel doors began to close. Felix turned, no sign of the creature. "Come on!" They sprinted. Asha was just a few steps from the door when the shadow lunged from the ceiling, arms outstretched. Felix turned and tackled it midair, crashing with it into the side wall. Asha reached the door. She turned. "Felix, go!" he shouted. The doors slammed shut between them, and Vault 7 fell into silence. The world outside was blue and quiet. Asha staggered into the snow, gasping, smoke curling from the closed steel doors behind her. The mountain rumbled. Ice cracked. Then silence. She fell to her knees. Behind her, Vault 7 had sealed itself shut, burying whatever lived within it, but not before it had taken Felix. An hour later, rescue helicopters arrived. Soldiers in cold weather gear surrounded Asha, pulled her to safety. She didn't speak at first, just stared at the mountains. The officials tried to question her. "What did you see down there? Was it alive? What happened to your team?" She only gave one answer. "It's still down there." Days passed. Asha was taken to a secure location. Debriefed, monitored, examined. She didn't sleep every time she closed her eyes. She heard it. Calling. Reaching. But slowly it faded. The voice grew fainter. And one morning, Asha woke without the hum in her skull. Felix was gone. The others too. But the thing beneath the ice had been sealed. And that, somehow, felt like victory. Years later, Asha stood on a cliff above the Arctic shelf, the wind pulling at her coat. Her hair was streaked with gray now. Her hand held a satellite phone. A familiar voice crackled through. "You're sure?" She nodded. "They're building again, under a new name. Farther north." A pause. "Do you want us to intervene?" Asha stared at the frozen sea. Then said, "No, let them find it." A beat of silence. "They won't survive." She allowed herself a cold smile. "Neither did we." The end. The story ends here, but the mysteries are probably still somewhere. No one has fully solved them. If you listened until the end, leave a comment sharing your feelings. What did you think of the ending? Which character impressed you the most? And don't forget to like the video. If you find it interesting, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next mysterious stories. There are still many journeys waiting to be told. Thank you for joining us tonight. See you again.